Hello, I'm Dr. Helen Crompton. I'm an associate professor at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. I'm also the director of the Virtual Reality Lab and the Technology Enhanced Learning Lab. But today I will be talking to you about writing journal articles. I've been fortunate to publish 150 manuscripts in the last 15 years, approximately. And I have kind of a set formula that I'm able to present to people of what I do. So here's the presentation. Let me just share these slides. There we go, writing journal articles. So this is for when you have completed your research and you'd like to translate that then into a publishable journal article, and not just a publishable journal article, but a really good journal article. So the main topics we're going to cover here on the large circles: choosing the journal, journal requirements, starting the paper, literature review, and there are parts in beneath each of those that we're going to cover. So first one, choosing the journal. So you're thinking about, first of all, subject, content, audience, quality. So kind of what type of journal do you want your work to be seen in? So let's start with subject content. Subject content. So think about, I mean, this seems an obvious one, but it's not always the case. You're thinking about what journal is matched to your work. For example, I focus on educational technologies. So computers and education would seem a perfect match. Computers, education. However, say a decade ago, when I actually used to look at this journal, it was really only publishing computer science things, it appeared to be. So computer scientists that were working on projects kind of for education, but they weren't for people in education. They weren't anything to do with that. So this is where you got to look carefully. So to find them, what you can do is, if you're looking around looking for literature, you can often find a really nice article. Look where that article was published. Also, in that nice article that you found that's a nice match to something similar to what you're doing, you can also look at the reference section to see who they cited and see where they published. So that's another way to do it. There's also Google Journal Analytics, and we're going to look at that in a second. And recognize authors. If you follow someone, their work, look where they publish. And if you've just heard of people's names, perhaps even, or that person that you follow, look in their Google Scholar. And once you see the Google Scholar there, it'll list their publications and where they cited. So there's multiple different ways of figuring out what type of journals match. And I would write a list. I wouldn't stick it to one. You can prioritize one, but I'd write a list of perhaps 4 or 5 that you're interested in. And then obviously go into the website and looking to see what they look like to match. Again, focus on audience. So they might sound like the computers in education, they might sound like they match, but until you actually go to the journal and look what types of things they're publishing and what audience they say they publish to, that's your indicator of what journal article you should be going for. Then quality here. This is what I always do with all the journals. People recommend journals, and you'll see journals out there on the web and you might think, oh, are they interesting? You can look at the quality, because you obviously want to publish in a journal of quality. And I actually recommend going for the highest possible quality, sending to them, and then you can, if it doesn't get fit in there, you can go below, but you can't raise a lesser quality to higher. So you really want the best quality journal article you can get. So I'm going to show you Scimago, but these are other examples: Cabell's, Web of Science, Journal of Citation Report. These things often I use hand in hand, because Scimago they are great at showing the other quartiles. Cabals show you the best view of acceptance rates. So it's kind of nice to use an intermingle of each. And let me show you what it looks like. I'll just do Skimago. So I'm going to the web and I'm going to go Skimago. As you can see, I use it a lot. Oh, Mago. There we go, journal ranks. Here it is. So really nice, clean interface here. I just type in the name of the journal. So computers, and it actually came up there, computers and education, which is one I do publish in now because it matches what I need. So when you go to that, you get a list of similar ones. The top one, there was the one I wanted. So this is the information it gives you. This is Computers and Ed, tells you who publishes it. Oh, it's jumping around a little bit here. Let me go back. There we go. I'm going to scroll instead of touching. You can see the H index there on the left, 197. You can see the scope, but these are the things I'm often interested in, the metrics. And if you scroll over here, it'll tell you what quartile. Quartiles are, quartile 1 is the top journal, quartile 2, lesser, down to 4. And I don't think they have below 4, but these over here are the fields. So in the field of computer science, it's in quartile 1. Field of education, quartile 1. E-learning, quartile 1. These can sometimes be different, like in that year it was different, quartile 2 in that year. So this is a really nice, simple way, and I'll just scroll down for one more second. It shows you all sorts of analytics there. So that's very helpful depending on what types of statistics you're looking for. So going back to the slideshow. On the right one, there we go. So they're crucial measures to find out whether a journal is good or not. You don't have to go off peer comments of, yes, try this journal. You can actually look at your own statistics. Journal requirements. As you've selected your journal, make sure you go to the website and find exactly what instructions. For example, how many words are you allowed to write in the article? What's the formatting style you have to follow, like on the left? This is a very strong recommendation that you need to stick with the word allowance. So work out throughout your paper approximately how many pages or how many words per section. If you write more and then try and come back, your quality is so much lessened. Because if you knew you had less space, you'd have wrote those sentences differently. You would have written those sentences differently to make it make sense. So be very careful with that. Try and stick to what it should be. And also the formatting style. Try and change at the end. You know, you can do that, but it's so much easier to follow it as you go along. And you'll see it coming up a little later when we go into headers. So starting the paper. This is usually the most difficult problem people face with writing the paper. It's the actual start of the paper. Well, let me show you this way of how to actually do it. And you can start a paper within literally seconds. So often it's a mental block for people. That's the biggest issue. They think, well, how do I start writing it? What do I need to do? Well, get past that by literally typing in titles, things like this. Once you start doing these things, you've already got your paper started. So what I always do with my papers, I don't have to think about it. I just go straight in, I open a blank document, I start with the title, and I put kind of a placeholder title in what that project's about, what a title could be that best fits. Then after that, I look at putting all these things on the left of the slide here. I put all those in my paper. And again, looking back at the journal requirements to make sure that we've got the right headers. For example, introduction. Some people want an introduction, some people don't want that title. So you follow what they say, but you write them in. So don't be getting stuck on having to think greatly, just literally type them in, type in abstract, type in keywords, and then come back and actually fill it in. So keywords, think about what your keywords are. I leave my abstract right to the very end of the paper because you don't know what fully that looks like until you've finished and you've written up your findings, etc. So put in your keywords, look at for formatting of journal, and reference manager. I also set up my reference manager, Mendeley or EndNote, whatever you want to choose. So you already at this point, without having to think about it and without even having to hesitate for a second, you've opened your document, put these titles in, filled in your keywords and your title. And in fact, an additional point at this point is if I have any notes on the methods or anything like that on a separate sheet, I literally grab those notes and put them under each section, which is kind of nice because you suddenly can end up with a really like 5 pages, depending on what notes you have. You don't have to organize the notes, you just literally dump them under, and then you can look at them a little later. Writing the introduction, I have what I call, I've done this for a while, the Crompton 3 Ps. So the introduction, again, it's a super hard one to write, and that is the most crucial part of the paper, because often reviewers will decide whether that is a good paper or not. If you look at any journals, this is the format, any good journal articles, this is the format they have. They have the 3 Ps, the positive, problem, and purpose. Now, the positive is actually just talking about the context. I'll give you an example. I focus on mobile devices for learning. So my positive will be setting the scene. Mobile devices are used for learning and they show great gains in this or something. Nice and short. But then you have to have a problem statement, which says that what the gap is in knowledge. Then you have a purpose of how you're going to meet that problem and what you're going to do to ameliorate that problem. So it's super simple. Positive, setting the scene, problem, and the purpose. And let me give you an example. Funny enough, actually, this was published in Computers and Education. I'm just thinking now, it's a short one, although it's very wide and small, single-spaced. But introductions don't have to be long. They just have to follow those 3 things. So now if you look, this one does exactly as I've described. You have, and I can't highlight it, but from the first word, mobile devices, to the end of that first paragraph, that is setting the scene. So I'm talking about mobile devices spreading at an unprecedented rate, where they're covered, device ownership, who's the largest demographic of users, and how it is supporting students learning in higher education settings. So this is me setting the scene. So you know what I'm talking about. My paper is about higher ed and mobile devices being used for learning. It's really clear in that first paragraph, but it's not long. Then you'll see the problem. However, research in mobile learning has been pragmatic and idiosyncratic, and there's the problem statement. And it goes all the way till the last sentence. So the problem's there. The last sentence is the purpose. Therefore, the purpose of this systematic review is to provide the scholarly community with this thing. So if you look back, positive, problem, purpose, if you follow that exact recipe, you will have a great introduction of everything that the reviewer would want to see right at the beginning. Now, when it comes to the literature review, that's slightly different. So I will admit, I read so much work, but when it comes to writing literature review, I often forget where on earth I've read a really good piece that I could put in the literature review. And you kind of scrambling around trying to grab things. This is a very formulaic method that I do. And while it takes a little time at the start, on the whole, it saves so much time. So I actually work on this strategy now, the Crompton coding of the literature review, and it just saves so much time. So what I do is I search databases first of all. Then I have like an inclusion exclusion criteria. It sounds kind of formulaic that, but it's looking for things. So imagine I'm going back to that other article. I'm focusing on mobile devices, higher education. So my inclusion is, I want something to do with mobile devices and I want something to do with higher education. My exclusion criteria in my head is, don't want K-12 or other perhaps adult learning. So you have your basic stuff that you're searching for. But then what I do is I get all those articles and I do this Crompton coding that I'm describing now. So what I do is, and so I'll listen to this carefully because this will revolutionize the way you write your literature review and make it so much sharper. So what you do is you get those articles that were of interest to you, and you can either print them off or you can do this identical method using online tools. But what I do is before I even look at them, I just write at the top in a little circle, A for the first one, B for the second one. There's no order. I just grab a stack, A, B, C, and so on. And so from now on, rather than having to identify that article by that big long title, by all those names, by the year, by anything, it's known as article, like in here, article B. It just makes things so much easier. It's just article B. And if you actually go past which I sometimes do, I go past the full alphabet, I just double up the letters, sorry. So what you do is you put that ABC in a circle. And I always stick it to the right-hand side just so I wouldn't know where it is. Then I read through each article. And as I read through, I only read through them once because I don't need to, for the overviewer, because I don't need to come back as such. I have the article and I find things of interest. So I might look at a piece of text and think, oh, I really like that. I'll underline it, I'll highlight it, whichever way, and I'll write a little note next to it in the document itself. So I'll highlight the bit I'm interested in. Then what happens as I'm highlighting it, at the same time, as soon as I've done that, I have a Word document. Again, you can do this just handwriting, but I write on what I found interesting in the shortest possible way possible. So let me show you what it looks like. So you can see here, look at the top one, design principles, mobile pedagogies, post-pandemic teaching. What that is there is the first one. Can you see where it says 34O? That is article O. Don't have to put the name of the author or whatever else, but the 34 means page. So page 34, article O, we talked about design principles, mobile pedagogies. And then similar to it actually was this post-pandemic teaching on page 34, article Q. So I kind of put those together. So first of all, they appear on a page separate, but as I read along and find something that matches something else, I put it together. Then when I've got my list of all these different things with all these little different topics that are important to me, I then make titles, like for me here, frameworks in digital equity. So I was looking at digital equity on Article N, page 33, there was a section there I was interested in on digital equity and what issues and how to address issues of finance. I found when I looked at Article O, they also did finance, so I put it under the same thing. So you can see how these end up kind of clumping together. So when I do then my literature review on frameworks or digital equity, I know exactly what articles to grab. I grab O, Q, N, P. I grab these articles and write from those articles, and they can be talking about the same thing, but that's when you have multiple citations to one thing. So hopefully this made sense. This is, once I've done this, it saves an unbelievable amount of time because one, I don't have to reread everything multiple times to remember where I found something. And two, once I've got this outline, when I come to write it, it's super, super fast because I know exactly where to look. I know when I'm writing it on, and it's just all there ready for me. So the writing part is very, very quick. Okay, this is one last quick tip, keeping the flow. This might sound different than you probably actually do in practice. And I was told this about 15 years ago, and I never followed it. And then when I did, it was a game changer. What you do is when you're writing a section and you come into the end of the time that you're working, do not finish the section. Finish just before the section and write a quick note on what you wanted to write or something, but finish before the section, because what happens when you come back, you will reread the rest of that section again and just finish off. And then your head's already in it that you can carry on with the rest, because what we normally do is we finish the section and stop for the day. When we come back the next day, we don't know where to start. It's kind of, oh, should I do this section now, or well, what should I do? And then you have to read that other section anyway. So stop a paragraph, probably a few sentences before you finish that section, so you know when you come back exactly where to get straight onto. Okay, final check. Read out loud, very cute with a little child there. And we always say, you know, don't read in your head, read out loud. Read the whole paper out loud to yourself. So you probably have to do this at home or with your office door closed or whatever. But reading out loud will tell you automatically if something makes sense. If you have it in a quiet voice, or if you try and do it in your head, it doesn't work because your brain fixes all your errors. So if you read it out loud, and I suggest you do this to something you've written recently, because you can immediately see things that you've never noticed before. And then you can correct those errors, correct the sense, correct the grammar, or whatever else you need. Cover letter, when you submit to the journal, make sure you put a cover letter in. Here is one that I had. You can pause it on here if you want to read that in more detail. But it's basically saying to the editor, you know, your opinion matters. I'm writing you this nice little letter here. I'm stating what the journal is I'm publishing to, the name of the article that I've done about, why this research, in very short, is important. And then I say that I'm following the requirements for what they want to do, that it's not published anywhere else. I followed the formatting requirements. I've done everything that I'm supposed to do. And then please contact me with any questions. So a nice crafted letter is great. Plus, once you get a nice crafted letter, again, it's like a formula, like everything else. I basically, that bottom paragraph of the two, that's pretty much usually left as is, unless they have a set formatting requirement that I add a little bit to show it's specific for theirs. And then the top one, I just swap the titles out, swap the journals out, and then just write that little blurb about why it's important. But again, it speeds up time. Okay, thanks for listening.